Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Kweppett, and I'm here to help you sharpen your masculine edge. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about the difference between lust and authentic sexual attraction. I think in today's world, these are often confused for each other, and I would argue that they are radically different. And I want to teach you how to get out of lust and into authentic sexual attraction and expression. So let's get into it. All right, so I think we're going to be talking about something important today. We're going to be talking about this difference between authentic sexual attraction and expression and lust. And I think this is very important because most people today, especially in our modern world, seem to lack any kind of conception about what an aligned and healthy sexuality looks like. And instead, they've kind of just adopted this lustful, objectification-based sort of dynamic as just the way things are, as the truth, as the natural way that you're supposed to go about handling your sexuality. And it's like we have this pendulum swing we've seen through history where people, they either indulge in this kind of lustful stuff or they're super repressive and afraid of sexuality because they see all of the damage that, the lustful side can cause, and they swing back and forth between puritanical repressionism and just outright hedonism. And I think we're much more close to the hedonistic side at this stage in our society. But it doesn't have to be this way, and I don't think it should be this way. I think what it's going to take, though, is just more people understanding what the other option is. So first, let's start with defining lust, okay? When you are caught in lust and you don't really know another way, you've kind of got two options. Either you can indulge the lust and kind of gain access to some sort of stimulatory high, or you can try and fight it and be filled with this sense of lack and craving. At the core of lust, I think there is basically this whole spirit of projection, objectification, and selfish getting. Okay, it's like all about grasping and filling yourself. It's all about, thinking that there's something really important out there, feeling empty in here, and trying to grab it and stuff yourself and make yourself feel full and satisfied. So let's walk through this. All right, let me break that down because that's kind of like an abstract idea. All right, so let's imagine that you've been training your brain for maybe since adolescence to rely on porn, orgasm, some kind of sexual stimulation for your sense of peace, for your sense of security, for your sense of self-worth. Maybe you identify with sexual validation in order to feel good about yourself. Whatever it is, if you're training yourself constantly to rely on these things, then essentially what you're doing is projecting. You're projecting your sense of peace, your sense of worth, your sense of comfort, all these things. You're mentally tying them to this external thing. Now, whenever you see an attractive woman, what's going to happen is your brain's going to do what you've trained it to do. It's going to project all that stuff onto her body, and you're going to crave it. You're going to want to get it back. And the more she matches your sexual template, the more her boobs and butt and face and stuff conform to your sexual standards and template that you desire, then the more of yourself you're going to project onto her. As you do that, the consequence of this is that you are creating an emotional vacuum inside of yourself. You're taking all this stuff you have here, you're putting it out there, and all of a sudden you're a vacuum. You're like a black hole, and you feel empty. And so what you want to do is you want to unite with all that stuff you've projected onto her. And this usually starts with your eyes. You're like, you're locked on, okay? You start trying to regain union with your projection with your eyes, okay? And, rarely that's enough. You don't just want to look. You want more than that. And so maybe you take it to the next level. You start fantasizing. You start, undressing her. You start having sex with her in your mind. Maybe that's not enough, and you gotta, you get so aroused and worked up and craving and lacking that you need to jerk off to some porn or something like that. And it's only when you get that sort of chemical release that you regain your sense of peace. You can, feel okay. You can relax again. And this is where that whole idea of objectification comes in. You're not really seeing her as a person. You're seeing her as a projection post. She's an object in your internal drama to be manipulated and used so that you can get the emotional payoff and satisfaction that you're looking for. Now, what a lot of people do is they kind of engage in these dysfunctional relationships built on lust, where they both kind of have complementary shaped holes inside of themselves and projections. So they just project their stuff on each other and feed off each other like vampires until they get sick of each other. They get to know the person too well to the point where that person's no longer a suitable projection post because they see them for what they are rather than just seeing their own crap on them. And then the relationship usually ends. Now, I think to some extent we all kind of do that. And, just because you're caught in lust doesn't mean that that's all you're doing. You might have actual, genuine, authentic feelings for them too. But as long as the lust dynamic's there, there's going to be this unfavorable tension that will definitely not support a long, fulfilling, healthy, relationship. So that's how I see the lust-based dynamic. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have what, I would call authentic sexual attraction, this is kind of like a subset of agape style love. This is the good stuff, all right. And opposed to this black hole grasping, genuine sexual attraction, it's a radiant thing. Okay, that's what arousal is. There's something that's woken up inside of you that wants to then come out. It's a giving of yourself rather than a grasping. You see someone that you're attracted to and that wakes something up inside of you, and then you engage in sharing what was woken up with that person, sharing your sexual attraction with that person. And it's a profoundly different dynamic because when you don't act on it, you're not filled with all this lack and craving. Instead, if anything, you're kind of charged up, you're energized. And that's perfect energy for, transmutation, for redirecting it towards something else. From this place, you can enter into a much better relationship with another person because you don't need them. You can just simply be free to want them, and I think this is what women really want. They don't want to be needed. Okay. That's a needy, like babyish sort of thing. They don't want that from their partner unless they've got serious baggage and holes of their own where they need to be needed so that they can feel good about themselves. No, they want to be wanted. And ironically, a lot of the pickup artist stuff about like how to pick up women or whatever is how to teach lustful men who are in this state of sexual need, how to pretend like they don't need the woman. And this actually makes them seem more attractive. And, that's a whole different conversation. But basically, like if you want to be attractive to women, don't need them. And the way that you can learn how to not need them is learn how to get over this lust stuff. Now, this is easier said than done. What happens if you've been training and conditioning this lust inside of yourself for years? It's a difficult transition to make. So in order to explain how it works, I'm going to kind of, paint this picture. All right. I want you to imagine that lust is a trap baited with candy. Okay. Each time you reach your hand into this trap of lust to grab some of that candy, basically what happens is that it latches a tiny little chain, just a little tiny chain onto you. At first, it doesn't seem like a big deal. You got these tiny little chains on you. You can still more or less go about your life. But as you keep, snagging those sweets, the chains build up and you start to lose some of your mobility. You stop being able to function as well, stop being able to feel so as free anymore. And it's making your life more difficult. But to your dismay, you realize the only way I'm going to get out of this thing is if I cut my arm off. There's no way I'm going to be able to cut these chains. And, that prospect seems terrifying to you. Rightfully so, because that's your arm. Why would you want to cut your arm off? And you look around and you see a bunch of other guys caught in similar traps. And some of them even look like they're enjoying themselves, stuffing their face with candy. So you tell yourself, oh, this must be normal. And you just kind of try to get used to living, in this chain. However, you can't really ignore it and your life is getting worse. And so you just try to distract yourself by eating more candy, which just, causes more chains to attach to you. And before you know it, not only is your arm completely consumed, so you're less effective, your leg is too. So you can't really even go where you want to go in life anymore without these chains of lust dragging you down. So what are you supposed to do? Cut off your arm and your leg now? Well, yeah, kind of. That is kind of how it works. But we're dealing with psychological appendages here, psychological attachments, not your physical body. So, we have the benefit when you're dealing on the mental and emotional level that these things can be regrown. They can be reconnected, rewired, because your brain is plastic. But it's still a painful and unappealing process. I think it's kind of the only option. When I started to understand how this worked, that Jesus teaching where it's like whoever tries to keep their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will gain it, or something along those lines. Because the only way that you're gonna connect, the only way you're gonna get connected to the things that you've been projecting. So whether it's your sense of peace, your sense of comfort, your sense of worth, your sense of wholeness, whatever it is that you've been putting on the lust, the only way you're going to really get those things back in a healthy way is if you lose them first. If you go through a period of not having them, go through a period of being disconnected from them. So it's like, you got to chop off the arm in order to get it back. And this transition, it can feel like a mini death. It's like this cycle of little, death, micro death and rebirth that's at the heart of all the hero stories, because that's the core psychological principle that is growth. I don't know why it's like this. My theory is that, either it's this pain of loss and grief and whatever that either stimulates the brain to change, or that is actually the feeling of the brain changing and adapting to a new way of operation. I don't really know, but this is the way it is. And so the key to accomplishing this is to affirm yourself. You must be affirming yourself in your rational mind about what you're doing while you're simultaneously, killing yourself in your emotional mind. You're building a new arm in your rational mind while you're chopping off that arm in your emotional mind. That's kind of how it works. And if you keep doing this properly, that new way of thinking in your rational mind that you've been building, it will implant into your emotional mind, and it'll become your new natural way of functioning. So it's like, instead of relying on porn for your XYZ, or relying on lust or that woman or whatever for you to feel good about yourself, you learn how to get that from within rather than from without. So instead of having a hole, you're full, you're filled, and you don't need to grasp. So when you're filled with lust and you're trying not to act on it, there's going to be that emotional part of you that's freaking out, screaming, saying, hey man, you're killing me. I need to jerk off. I need to stare at her. I need to do this. I need to do that, or I'm going to die. And you need to say in your rational mind, yeah, you're supposed to die. You're terrible for me. And then you also need to tell yourself that, okay, I don't need orgasm. I don't need her. I don't need this or that in order to be okay. I am okay. I'm good. I'm fine. And you need to be talking to yourself and saying these things. And, honestly, this is going to start a war inside of you. That's why Reboot's a big deal, because it's a war between your rational mind and your emotional mind. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to get sorted out. You need to understand all the fears of your emotional mind. You need to address the ones that make sense and are legit. And you need to kind of learn which ones are total lies and fabrications and deceptions. And once you kind of figure out the core stories that are going on, then you go into battle mode. Then you need to enter into that challenger mindset that I've talked about in previous videos. And you need to treat the dissenting thoughts that you know are bad as enemies, because they are enemies. And you need to put them down. You need to engage that aggressive side of yourself to really make sure that you follow through with this process. As you learn how to talk to yourself rather than just listen to that dysfunctional part, eventually you will start winning this war. And as you start winning this war, you will become less of a grasping black hole and more of a radiant force of sexual, confidence, power, and masculinity. Okay, so hopefully you found this interesting and useful. I didn't get to get into all the details, but this should hopefully give you something to chew on. If you found it, good, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.